have done it without our partners, and we really appreciate the bid. We also appreciate Cinetic Theater for being such a wonderful host. What a beautiful venue. I hope you all will come back and see their shows and support them. Another great Arlington Chamber member, another great institution in our county as well. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator extraordinaire for tonight. Scott Broadbeck is the owner of Local News Now, LLC, which operates a hyper-local online news publication that you all know well as ARL Now. Founded in 2010, ARL Now covers Arlington, is nationally recognized as a leading independent online-only local news publication. This is the second year that Scott has partnered with us to moderate this event, and last time it was his first time moderating Candidate Forum, so he's a veteran at this point. And we really appreciate his involvement as well as the reach to that audience as well. So let's give a warm welcome tonight for Scott Broadbeck.
All right, thank you, Kate. And thank you to the Chamber and Crystal City Bid for sponsoring this forum. We're going to talk about some important issues to the business community here tonight. And also when we're done, I couldn't help but say that if you haven't been to Artomatic yet, the entrance is just next door. Is that right, Rob? So, very cool art event happening right here across the way. They did not tell me to say that. I just improvised that.
We appreciate it.
All right, so without further ado, I now have the pleasure of introducing the candidates for tonight's forum. Joining us tonight are Audrey Clement, running as an independent. Peter Fallon of the Democratic Party. Eric Gutschall of the Democratic Party. Kim Klingler, also a Democrat. And Vivek Patil of the Democratic Party, who was unable to join us this evening due to a work conflict. Thank you all for coming tonight. Info packets with the candidates' biographies are available at the registration table. In the interest of time, we'll let you read those on your own. All right, so we're going to start with opening remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes. Audrey, we will start with you.
Good evening, ACC members and Arlington voters. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. As a 13-year resident of Westover, I know that Arlington is a great place to live and work. Like many other county residents, I've enjoyed a convenient lifestyle and easy access to jobs via metro, bus, and bike, and other amenities that are unrivaled in Northern Virginia. But all this is in jeopardy. The Arlington office occupancy rate, which is still way below its historic average, is about to take another plunge as the Trump administration gears up to slash, burn, and RIF all non-military discretionary spending. If Congress approves Trump's budget, Arlington could lose 10,000 jobs, leading to a spike in the office vacancy rate and significant hardship for government workers unable to find reemployment in the area. The drastic nature of Trump's proposed budget cuts and their disproportionate impact on Arlington County calls for new leadership to respond to the crisis. County Board can no longer meet budget shortfalls by upping the tax rate. It will have to sacrifice the demands of special interest groups to maintain basic services. As a longtime civic activist with a PhD in political science and service as a congressional fellow, I am qualified to fill that role. If elected, I plan to seek tax relief for residents and businesses, emphasize basic services like streets, schools, libraries, parks, transit, and public safety, promote consolidation of housing programs and other services, preserve green space and promote installation of renewable energy, promote transparency in the decision-making process, and provide a voice on County Board for all taxpayers. This year, the choice is clear. Complacency in the face of a push to decimate the federal workforce, or tax relief and other measures to alleviate hardship on residents and businesses alike. Vote Clement on November 7th to assure that needs, not wants, drive county government.
All right, Peter, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm Peter Fallon. I'm one of the Democratic candidates for the County Board. Now, like Angie, I'm someone who's often been described as someone who lives and breathes Arlington. In fact, 31 years ago, I came to Arlington and lived here in Crystal City, first in Crystal House, then in Crystal Towers. I remember when this was a movie theater and came here with my wife after we were newly married. Then I remember when this became the temporary home for Arena Stage during their renovation in Washington. And now we have our own local group, Cinetic Theater, which I've had the pleasure of seeing over at the Liber Run Amphitheater in the summer, another local treasure that I hope you'll also take advantage of. Now, I've had the opportunity to serve on the County Planning Commission for 9 years, Housing Commission for 3 years, Transportation Commission for 3 years. During my time on the Planning Commission, BRAC came in, and we had to deal with the challenges of reinventing Crystal City and dealing with some of the challenges that have been there with the departing employers and the changes in the federal workforce. Now, I'm running in this election for several reasons. One, I'm the parent of a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, so we're contributing to the school overcrowding in my house. Now, that said, I believe the county board has a role to help more proactively with school overcrowding. I believe that many of our problems in Arlington, some of them are external, some of them are internal, but we need to be more action-oriented and have a reputation for getting things done. We need to fix Metro and make it safe and reliable and convenient again and expand local transit. We need to continue being a walkable community. With the schools and with other parks and recreation needs, we need public facilities. We need to be looking for strategic acquisitions of land in order to meet the growing needs of our community. I believe affordability is very important in Arlington. We're losing diversity as we become less affordable. But affordability is not just about rents, it's also about home purchasing, childcare, transportation, and retail. And also transparency, where people actually can have a say in local government, even if their opinion is a little different than those in charge. Thank you.
Good evening, Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, there we are. Okay, hello everybody. It's great to see a lot of faces that I recognize and also to meet some new faces. My name's Eric Gutschall. I'm focused on the future, and I'm hoping to have your support in the Democratic Caucus for County Board coming up very soon, May 9th, 11th, and 13th. So I'm running because I believe that I can bring a new perspective to the County Board that we don't have right now, which is to bring the perspective of this chamber and all of our businesses. I own a small business here in Arlington, Clarendon Home Services. We were this chamber's 2012 Small Service Business of the Year. Well, thank you. He's a plant, I'm with me. And what I think that offers, that perspective, yes, I've been Civic Association president. Yes, I've been on the board of Doorways for Women and Families, so I understand the role of nonprofits in a very caring community. I'm currently chair of the Planning Commission. I've been on the Transportation Commission, so I have that civic background. But I think what we really need here in Arlington is we need a voice on the board that understands what it's like as a business and as somebody who does business with the county on an everyday basis. I think I have a pretty good idea of what it's going to take to improve the level of customer service that all of our businesses get from the county. It can be maddening. And in order for us to improve our business climate here, to help solve that vacancy climate, we have to be known as the place where, whether you want to be a startup of any kind, you want to start a business, you want to start a big data company, that the county government will not be the dead weight bureaucracy, but will be the kind of place where it's get to yes. It's not, here's my list of 10 reasons why I can say no. It's, how am I going to help you get to yes? We can do that. I want to make that happen. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, the Chamber. My name is Kim Plingler. I am a Chamber member, and I am running for County Board. I have lived in Arlington now for 15 years. Arlington is my home. Professionally, I am in healthcare. I have traveled the U.S. and the U.K. installing technology to improve patient care. I have also set up workforce development programs and health information exchanges to really move our country forward in the healthcare space. I am also a certified project manager professional. So that means not only do I know how to create great projects, but I know how to execute upon them. I was also a successful senior manager at Deloitte Consulting. And just a few years ago, I decided to make a change, and I have gone to a nonprofit. I'm now a division director at the American Society for Clinical Oncology. Throughout this time, I've also believed in giving back to the community. I've served as a volunteer firefighter, EMT. I am also the chair of the Emergency Preparedness Advisory Commission and a civic association president for Leeway Overlay, which is near Westover. But two of my proudest moments, one was being selected for Leadership Arlington's class of 2007, and also being named one of Arlington's 40 under 40, which was a great honor to me. I am running because I want to keep Arlington safe, keep us diverse, and forward-thinking. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Kim. Next we have Nathan Saxman, who is reading a prepared statement on behalf of Democratic candidate Vivek Patil.
Good evening. I apologize for being unable to join you for what I imagine will be an insightful and engaging exchange of ideas regarding Arlington County's business climate. I came to the United States 18 years ago in pursuit of my American dream. I earned my PhD in chemical engineering in Ohio and moved to Boston, where I spent a few years in academia before transitioning to the private sector, working at innovative biotech companies and founding 2 of my own. One of the things about being a scientist and entrepreneur is that you are surrounded by big or seemingly impossible ideas with no choice but to find a way to make them a reality. This perspective not only led to my appointment to the Economic Development Commission in Arlington, but has informed my vision for what Arlington needs to accomplish in the long term. In brief, it is time for us to think bigger. This campaign has been laser focused on the diversification of our Arlington economy. We are in desperate need of new industries to fill vacant office space and to reverse the shift of our tax burden onto the shoulders of residents. At this moment, Arlington has the talent, the livability, and the financial and strategic resources to reinvent itself into our planet's most dominant clean and green tech innovation hub. However, if we are to seize this green tech opportunity, we must act expeditiously and decisively. What is truly remarkable about a green and clean tech vision is that it is an innovate, build, manufacture economy. A highly skilled workforce of engineers, scientists, and designers will invent the next generation battery, solar panel, and wind turbine right here in Arlington, while manufacturing facilities in 4 Mile Run or the Shenandoah Valley employ technically trained Virginians. This is an economic model that places Arlington at the epicenter of a new generation of job creation spanning the Commonwealth. It creates an opportunity continuum linking rural and urban communities, skilled and unskilled workers, and bridges divisions between Virginia's regions by advancing a prosperous yet equitable economy. I am committed, and my candidacy represents an opportunity to refocus our business priorities in Arlington. I hope that you are ready to join me, and I ask for your support at the Democratic Caucus on May 9th, 11th, and 13th.
All right, thank you all. Now to the questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the predetermined questions, and then we will end the forum with closing statements. All right, we're going to start with Audrey for the first question. Audrey, what should the county do to make it easier to do business in Arlington? And how would you help accomplish that? For example, are there any specific regulations or fees that you believe are an unnecessary burden? I think you just have to say.
Well, I think the most serious burden that Arlington businesses are facing right now is a decision of County Board last week to increase the tax rate by 1.5 cents. I opposed any and all tax increases, and earlier on the campaign trail, I revealed information that indicates that the county has excessive fund balances, and that this year's budgetary shortfall, which was brought about as a result of Metro's needs and over-enrollment, could have been addressed through drawing down the fund balances that this county has. Now, obviously, County Board did not agree. In fact, just a couple days before it adopted the budget with the tax increase, it had a work session specifically to address its fund balances. And one of the experts that it hired, a local small business, indicated that that the fund balances might not even be adequate, and that it claims that they might otherwise be addressed through. They claim basically that if anything, we need to put more money into our fund balance. I disagree with that analysis, and I agree with other analysts who believe that the county is basically hoarding money. So yes, I would do something to redress small businesses, particularly in this county, by reducing the tax rate, which affects both the commercial and the residential taxpayers. As for other programs that could help businesses, I'm concerned about excessive assessments on small businesses that have been reported, particularly in the Clarendon community, but all up and down the Ballston-Roslyn corridor. I would address that concern. I understand that the county does have a program currently in place to streamline the permitting process, and I support that.
Thank you, Scott. In my day job, I'm an accountant, mostly doing taxation work and small business accounting services out in Fairfax. Now, I think that one of the things we have to change here in Arlington is this perception of, because it's perception is reality, that some of the staff within the county government are not as customer service focused as they need to be. And that they're there to serve the business community, the public, whoever is goes on the other side of the desk, whether it's permitting or some other effort. And I think that one of the things we have to do is that I don't know if necessarily we had more cumbersome or burdensome rules on the books as much as we're very zealous in enforcing them. Okay? And when you're that zealous, sometimes you don't have, again, the flexibility of, what's the bigger picture? What are we trying to do? Maybe a particular sign doesn't sort of fit on a certain checklist about what is appropriate signage for a location, but maybe it's an okay sign and it helps the business and it's not somehow offensive to, the community or someone in the community. And so it's really having a little bit more flexibility there. The other thing I think deals with staff training, in which, particularly with permitting, for example, and anytime there's multi-levels involved, where you think you've cleared a hurdle, but you haven't really, because you're farther down the path, and then there's the staff has the right to go back and say, oops, we missed this, sorry, but you now have to go back and remediate this. And that really drags everything out and adds to the costs. So we have to do a better job of how we're basically, regulating and administering these things. I think that another important aspect here is certainly continuing to work with the bids, the chamber, economic development, but the county board at the top can set a tone for being welcome to business. But again, businesses that are going to help bring other things, other companies to Arlington and quality jobs and be good corporate citizens and contribute to our community.
I don't believe that the issue of being business friendly is something that has to do with individual county employees or staff. I think we have a great professional staff. I think it's actually the entire culture. It's the way that our county government, for whatever reason, good and bad, that it's evolved over the years as we've grown. The culture of get to yes just doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist because it hasn't had a champion. And I want to be that champion. We added a few years ago a business ombudsman. I think everybody in this room probably knows Shannon and has had opportunities to interact with her. She's really overwhelmed because the issues are so systemic. It's not something that one person or even with small staff can resolve. So what it really means, I think, the real solution here is we have to have a wholesale look at where are these silos and stovepipes that we need to clear out of the way. If somebody goes into the county offices there whether it's to get a permit because you want to add a sidewalk sign to drum up some more lunch crowd for your restaurant, or whether you're trying to get your certificate of occupancy for your new big data idea, you shouldn't be told, well, you got to go up to the 10th floor first. Well, no, now you got to go down to the 8th floor, and then you got to go to the 6th floor for this and that. And oh, you got to go pay on the 3rd floor, by the way. And you should never be told. And one of my employees was just told this just the other day. Well, that's not my department. We need the notion and the idea from the very top to the very bottom that it's about a culture of get to yes. And the other things that we can do, the other ideas that I want to work on, are technical assistance to our small businesses, our innovators and entrepreneurs, and things that like expanding the availability of childcare in the community, because that's an employer issue. If it's an employee issue, it's also an employer issue. Thank you.
So to go back to the question of unnecessary taxes, recently I've sat down with the owners of EnviroCab, of Elevation Burger, and members of AWE. And two of the things that came up on the table was, number one, the county has just imposed, I think, a $66 recycling audit tax. And $66 may not seem like a lot, but then you have to arrange for a county member to come in and to inspect the fact that you have a trash can next to a recycling bin. Is that something that is truly necessary in Arlington? We need to ask ourselves that question. The other thing is we have a lot of small businesses in Arlington that do business on the side. They might be making less than $25,000 a year. Could we consider, right now the cap is $10,000. You have to pay taxes on $10,000 of revenue, of income. Could we consider raising that to $50,000? When you run the numbers, it looks like the county may miss out on $200,000 of revenue. So this is something we should consider to inspire our small businesses to grow, even if they are only part-time businesses. I have to tell you, one of the things that Eric has talked about is customer service. And that is why I'm so proud that Ingrid Maroy, the Commissioner of the Revenue, has endorsed me. And one of the reasons she has endorsed me is because I am a certified professional project manager. And I know what good business and good service and good project plans and execution look like. And I would like to see all departments across Arlington's county pretty much live to those standards and exceed those standards.
Okay, thank you. We're going to next start with Peter. This is a question about Metro, which is on a lot of our minds. So the question is, with WMATA serving as an integral component of our region's transportation infrastructure, as a vital tool for transporting our workforce, how would you collaborate with other members of the WMATA Compact to improve Metro?
Thanks, Scott. Excuse me. More than 4 decades ago, actually more than 5 decades ago, Arlington staked its economic future on being part of Metro. And the Metro Compact, unfortunately, was about creating the regional transit system, not operating the regional transit system. Now, several years ago, until a few years ago rather, we did have a voting member on the WMATA board. And due to politics, we lost that voting member. Mr. Dorsey, I think, is very capably representing Arlington and our interests right now as Arlington's WMATA representative, even without a true vote on that. But I happen to believe the Metro Compact needs to be part of a reform package. And it's time for all the local jurisdictions to basically renegotiate that compact and who is going to be involved in voting on it as stakeholders, as well as finding dedicated funding streams, whether they're federal or state or also from the local level. We have an aging metro system that unfortunately is not safe. People have died, all right? It is not reliable. We are cutting service at the same time and raising fares at the same time that it's contrary to our policy of a public policy of trying to encourage transit and alternatives to single occupancy users. At the same time, again, we have a lot more regional competition for employers and office space. And Metro, we no longer have a competitive advantage just with Metro, all the other jurisdictions do. So again, I think it comes down to Arlington has to, even though we're not very large, we're one of the original members of Metro. We have clearly the most underground stations per capita, and we've concentrated all of our business development and economic future on those areas. All right, we have to work with Metro, make it better, and get serious, and make it safe and reliable for the future, and expand transit in general.
Eric?
No question about it, Metro is the very lifeblood of not just Arlington's economy, but the region. And that's actually the good news, because when you talk about collaborating with our regional partners, it's much easier to have those conversations, and there's going to be some difficult conversations coming in terms of how do we establish a sustainable, long-term funding source that is equitable and fair and provides the level of funding that we're going to need, not only to stabilize Metro and take care of all of this deferred maintenance that we've had, but actually to allow us to get back to where we need to be, which is looking at the future. Our region is going to continue to grow, and that growth has to be tied to Metro, because we're not going to be able to move all of these people around, the workforce around, with any other model other than heavily reliant on transit of all kinds, but certainly Metro is the basis of that. So we need to have the conversation that is looking into the future of another crossing of the Potomac River, for example. So I am encouraged by the appointment of our Governor McAuliffe, of Ray LaHood, to head up a panel. I think absolutely the compact needs to be renegotiated. It was set up to get Metro up and running. It was not really set up in a way to keep Metro running and to have it into the future. We need a governance of Metro that has no other focus other than to run the very, very best transit system that you can. And as someone representing Arlington in that regional discussion, I would look for, at every step of the way, the common ground, which is that we are all in this together. It's not about what's in it for Arlington or any of the other jurisdictions. It's about how are we going to leverage this tremendous asset to propel future growth. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
It has been said that one of the reasons we lost our voting seat is because we did not build and sustain relationships, that we tried to go off and do things on our own. And we know better now. We know that we need to be forward-thinking, we need to be relationship building. I will tell you, back in 2007, Mark Ingrayo, who was the president of the Reston Chamber, came out to one of the Committee of 100 events, and he talked about Metro. And he talked about the need for Arlington to get in front of the Silver Line and to start truly building relationships with its neighbors, including Reston. I have these relationships through Leadership Arlington, through the Sorensen Institute, and really I would be able to build off these relationships starting on day one, because we need the relationships in order to drive for dedicated regional funding for Metro, as well as to drive for performance standards and building accountability with our unions. Wouldn't it be an interesting concept if some of the funding for Metro were based upon could we minimize the number of arcing incidences? And when I say arcing, that is when there is fire and smoke in the tunnel. And as a volunteer firefighter EMT, I have been in those tunnels during those incidences. As your county board member, I would not want to be paying Metro more money if I knew our arcing incidences continued to increase. So it is really about building relationships in order to hold the unions and Metro accountable, as well as to work with Richmond, as well as our other jurisdictions, to have a dedicated funding source.
Well, I certainly would not be apologizing to anyone about Arlington's past conduct on the various transportation commissions in Northern Virginia. It's done an excellent job, and the proof is in the pudding. Arlington is one of only 2 other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia that saw an increase in ridership from their transit service, the ART bus service. I support it. I support, of all Arlington officials, Dennis Leach, who is the Director of Transportation, for guiding our Transportation Division. That said, I do agree with others, other candidates tonight, that what we need to do is, in the long term, is to get a dedicated funding source by renegotiating our compact with other participants in WMATA. And in the short term, we absolutely do need to get a voting member on the WMATA board. That's absolutely essential. And in addition to that, I want to promote an idea that has been advanced by Civic Leader Suzanne Sundberg, which is to take a look at something called the commercial real estate surcharge tax, which is a 12.5% tax on commercial real estate on top of what they already pay. And that currently is dedicated only to new capital projects. Thus, it cannot be used to do any type of ongoing operation or maintenance of our streets or of our buses or any component thereof. We need to renegotiate that tax. First of all, there's a question about its legality because according to our Constitution, our state Constitution, commercial and residential have to be equally taxed, and they're not. But let's assume that that's not going to go away and that the commercial enterprises in this county are going to be visited with the surcharge tax. Then it needs to be used in a way that will promote mass transit by the county. As Metro cedes some of its routes to us, we need to be able to pay for these routes ourselves.
Thank you. Next question, we're going to start with Eric. Many jurisdictions, including Arlington, utilize economic development incentives to attract and retain businesses. Where do you stand on using these incentives to attract new businesses to Arlington?
I am grateful that Arlington has realized where the market is, if you will. I think several years ago, in particular, when NSF was in negotiations, there was this stance that Arlington was not, this was just something that we don't do in Arlington. I think we've been able to take for granted for a long time that as fast as we could build our office buildings, the feds and their contractors would come and fill them up, so it wasn't something that we were accustomed to doing. That's not the reality anymore, and I think that Nestle is a fantastic success story, and Victor Hoskins and his team deserve a lot of credit for that's a big win for Arlington. However, I do want to let you know that I believe we should not become allow the pendulum to swing so far the other side that we become myopic and focused solely on going out and chasing the big guys, because we know that half of our tax base, our commercial tax base here in Arlington, is paid by small businesses like myself and our innovators and our entrepreneurs. And while folks like Boeing and Nestle and all those are excellent anchors, we also want to have a burgeoning, thriving small business, innovative, and startups. And the way that gets back to what can we do in the way of some incentives and some technical assistance, looking at opening up some of these vacant ground floors that we have, allowing for child care centers to come in there, where you see wind-swept plazas that aren't getting used a lot. Let's install some playground equipment there and allow the adjacent retail to become a child care. So by not only focusing on the big guys, but also focusing on our small businesses and innovators and entrepreneurs, we're going to get the most diverse and thriving economy.
Thank you. Kim?
This is very near and dear to me because where I work in Alexandria, the National Science Foundation building is being built right next door. I can literally look at my office every day and I can imagine Arlington losing 2,400 jobs, a child care center, meals taxes, and 200,000 visitors. And I will tell you, Alexandria did do some creative things to encourage NSF to come. And we did some very creative things as well with Nestle, which we should be proud of. We fast-tracked permitting. But wouldn't that be nice if we could also do that for our other small and medium and other large businesses? We decided to relocate bus stops for Nestle. I gotta tell you, I've been waiting for a sidewalk in my neighborhood for where bus stops are for 7 years. So that would be very nice. And we stood up a website for Nestle employees within 3 weeks. So the point is, we did great things for Nestle because we need that anchor. We need that economic development. We need that investment here in Arlington. But we can also apply those lessons those tax incentives, those financial incentives, as well as those other incentives to bring in additional businesses here in Arlington, and frankly, retaining the businesses that are here, and the ones who are looking to move their corporate headquarters out to Falls Church City and to Fairfax City. We want to keep them. Let's treat them like Nestle, shall we?
Well, I certainly agree with Kim on that. I'm happy that Nestle's come to Arlington. I'm not happy that we paid $6 million to do it. I'm also not happy that the state provided Nestle with another $10 million because Nestle does not have a stellar corporate reputation. I think, but Nestle also happens to be the largest manufacturer of bottled water in the world. It's the largest food corporation in the world. It didn't need our money. Our small businesses do. Now, there's two ways in which I want to help our small business. The first way I already mentioned. I want to reduce the tax rate. The tax rate is equally applied, at least the base tax rate is equally applied to residents and businesses. So any tax relief we give one will be equally applied to the other. I think that is eminently equitable. And secondly, I would reevaluate the tax assessment process because I understand that a number of businesses were forced out of Arlington due to usurious assessments that they received. Now, of course, I believe the county disputes that, but so far, there has been no impartial evaluation of how we assess our commercial enterprises. I don't know whether the internal county auditor has the authority to do that or not. But if I were elected to the board, I would see about some type of independent assessment of our assessment practices. And I think by reducing the base tax rate and reevaluating our assessment procedures, I think we would be going a long way to equalizing the playing field for small businesses in this county. I also want to mention that I just read an article that was published in Now, I believe several weeks ago, that was a survey of the restaurants in the county. A number of restaurants have gone out of business, but the article seems to indicate that this is the natural course, that many restaurants fail anyhow, but I would assess that also.
I remember when Crystal City had the patent office. I wanted to say the pension office, but the patent office here. And then we lost that to Alexandria. And I served on the County Planning Commission when BRAC came through. And I think the county certainly tried to respond to that, and the folks in Crystal City and the BID and others. But you know, I remember at the time thinking, we had an entire office market here that was very heavily dependent on GSA tenants, government agencies, in some cases in Class B and C office building. Why did no one think at the county level that, you know, somehow this could all go away and then we're going to have to try to reinvent this and we're going to have a challenge doing that? So it really comes, I think, in part to the need to really be more visionary about how we're going to end with our economic development strategy. Now, I do accept the fact that economic incentives are probably going to become the norm now. Right? What I do want to avoid is essentially bidding wars with our competitive, highly competitive local jurisdictions, where it's just a matter of, you know, everyone's trying to basically get us down as low as possible. I do applaud the county board for with the Nestle, and that was fortunately a combination of state and local money. And if we have a change in administration to another party next year, we may not be getting state money offered to us. It may fall more of a burden on Arlington. But with the Nestle deal, one thing that I particularly like about it was that it did have certain benchmarks in place in order to assume, you know, where they had to sort of basically perform certain things in order to receive the money. Now, I think that it's important that we also not undersell the fact that we do have a unique built-out environment here in Arlington. When they made the decision to put the Silver Line above ground in Tyson's, they lost a big opportunity to take stuff away from us. They didn't. It is not our only ace in the hole anymore by any stretch. We're the only local jurisdiction that is close to DC and has great schools. We need to use that as well as a economic driver. Thank you.
Thank you. I want you all to know that it's not just Alexandria taking from Arlington. Our new reporter, Chris, is in the back. He just realized I was bringing him up, and we hired him from the Alexandria Times. So Goes both ways. All right, next question. We're going to start with Kim. While Arlington has consistently been named one of the top communities for millennials, according to the Kogut Center of Greater Washington Millennial Index, Arlington millennials were most likely to move out of the region for the right job to the tune of 77.5%. The study cited housing affordability and traffic as the main culprits and stressed the importance of good paying jobs in retaining and attracting millennials. If elected, how would you improve these areas, these three areas? The traffic, housing affordability, and
Good paying jobs.
jobs. Thank you, Casey.
The trifecta.
So let's first start with housing. When I was at Deloitte Consulting, one of the things we started to investigate was actually a grant or a loan program where Deloitte would pay 2/3, and we were having discussions with the county that the county might pick up 1/3, so we could actually have young professionals living in Arlington who were working at Deloitte in Roslyn. Now, that idea flopped, but I do think with the resurgence of businesses coming into Arlington, such as Nestle, such as other larger businesses, this is something we could absolutely pick up. I also want to speak to rezoning. Right now, we have affordable housing for 60% and below of the annual median income, AMI. But we also are building McMansions by leaps and bounds that are at about 250% of the AMI. Where is the middle? Where are the places that young professionals, the millennials, the MTV generation like myself, young families, where can they live? I am a member of the Lee Highway Alliance, and one of the things that we are doing is we are creating a vision along Lee Highway in order to find options in the middle. We are talking about duplexes, multiplexes, townhomes, 4-story condo and apartment buildings, which are affordable in the middle for folks such as millennials, so that they can stay in Arlington County, they can find a place to rent, they can find a place to live. It may not be a single-family home, but we will maintain them. We will keep them here. We will keep the brain trust in the county. In regards to traffic, like we said, we need to fix Metro. We really do. But we also need to look at our bus lines. The Northern Virginia Transportation Commission right now is doing a study which would help streamline our bus lines across our partners, Dash, ART, WMATA, etc. I'm very interested in their findings. I hope we will be politically brave enough to actually work to implement their findings so we can have streamlined bus services that will augment Metro.
Well, as far as housing is concerned, I live in the Westover community, which is being basically regentrified out of existence. So far, 7 buildings have been demolished and replaced with luxury housing. The original tenants had to move out of the county. 2 more buildings are going to be going down around July the 1st. I've already talked to several of the tenants, and at least one of them has indicated to me that he has to move to Prince William County. There's nothing affordable left in this county for him. So yeah, there is a big problem here. We are going to become a county of the upper middle class and the lower middle class, and there's not going to be any middle class left unless we do something about it. And I see there's an opportunity. I've been told that the way to go is something is called co-ops. That is, individual get together to invest in one of the buildings that might otherwise be slated for demolition, purchase those buildings, and I think the county could develop a program that might facilitate that, and that's how the county would help in that regard. As for transit, I support mass transit. I depend on mass transit, and I like ArcBus. And what I would do to promote ArcBus is what I mentioned earlier, and that is to redirect the commercial real estate surcharge tax to finance ongoing maintenance and operations. This will require this is legislative. This can only be enacted through legislation, amending the existing law, and so if elected, I will lobby our state legislators to do that. Now, as far as jobs are concerned, you would be interested to know that Arlington's profile indicates that almost 50,000 people are 50,000 jobs in this county are government related. So that would either be government workers or government contractors. And we stand to lose 15% of those jobs with the Trump administration. Thank you.
I came to Arlington 31 years ago. I was an undergraduate along with my wife at George Washington downtown. And we actually came to Arlington because it was more affordable than DC. And I don't think we ever thought that we'd still be here 31 years later, and we're not leaving anytime soon. But, you know, sometimes you don't know where life is going to take you in terms of relationships, careers, and, you know, and opportunities. And that can also, I think, be part of the reason that people choose to leave. Because interestingly, I mean, I believe that RNOW has reported that we also are a destination for the most affluent millennials in the country. And while we have empty office space, we're renting out these residential buildings at, frankly, you know, rents for one-bedrooms that are more than my mortgage. And somehow the demand is there to absorb that supply. But I agree that we are becoming, you know, a less diverse community, ethnically as well as in terms of income. And affordability, as I said earlier in my introduction, is one of the hallmarks of my campaign. Now, with housing, we do rezoning all the time. You know, I mean, there isn't a board meeting, but there isn't some type of rezoning that happens. You know, either an amendment to the zoning ordinance or an amendment to particular sites, okay, or rezoning. In every case, save for the nonprofits, every time we have gotten more units, you tear a house down, you get multiple houses, or you get townhouses, or you tear down a couple of things and you get a high-rise building. In every single case, save for when we work with the nonprofits, the housing nonprofits, the new housing is always more money. So anyone who thinks that, you know, just rezoning changes are going to be this panacea or a magic bullet, well, you just have to look at the last 40 years of reality in this county, all right? And as a planning commissioner, that always bothered me. But that is the free market, and I do support that, okay? Now, I do believe that we can amend the housing ordinance, for example, and continue using the housing nonprofit model, where we take the profits, the community benefits, and basically use that money to get middle-class housing for more people. Thank you.
When I first started thinking about how are we going to address the fundamental issue of gentrification and how that relates to livability, because that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about how are we going to have places that people not only want to be, but that you can afford to be. That actually, a groundbreaking moment for me was, I think it was a chamber event actually several years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, over at the Rosslyn Spectrum Theater. And a senior vice president for corporate executive board was talking about their concern that as they have these great millennials that are coming in and the company invests in their training and education, but as they sort of get to that middle management years where they start to get married, they're thinking about starting, you know, having a family, they want to purchase a home, that Arlington didn't have what they needed, and so they were getting poached away, whether it's to Austin, Texas, or wherever, and that this was a real concern for them. And so if it's a concern for businesses, it's a concern for everyone. It's a concern for all of us, because our great progressive success story is not possible without that key ingredient of the prosperity which is driven by our business climate. So let me clarify something real quick here, which is, what is missing middle housing all about? I think many of you know that I introduced this concept to Arlington last year. It's a national movement, though. It's not my idea. I just brought it to Arlington. It's now in the Planning Division's work plan, and I'm proud of that from the campaign last year. And it's not about rezoning properties. We do that all the time. It's about changing the zoning tools that we have available and creating a whole different type of housing mixes and housing products. If you look, anyone that's in development business or the planning, in the planning profession, when you look and you see across Lee Highway and Glebe Road and other places where you see old strip malls and used car lots, there's a reason that land is underutilized. It's because we don't have the zoning tools to make other options possible. We can fix that.
All right, the next question is a question that the comment section of my website debates endlessly, but we're going to give it to you, the candidates. there seems to be a lack of a shared vision for the future of Arlington. How would you balance economic development, which supports our tax base, with the sentiment of some residents who object to development projects? Audrey.
Well, the answer to that question is real easy. The problem with Arlington's development model right now is that we accede to basically every developer with money who makes an ask. What we need to do is consider these asks in light of something called fiscal impact analysis. In other words, every time a major site plan development project comes before the board, it needs to study the impacts on schools, streets, public safety, and green space. And if it does those things, it is in a much better position to determine the actual benefit of the project to the county. And this is consistent with something called cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis is used in industry, it's used in the government, it's used all over the world to assess the potential benefits of a given project. And there is no particular reason why Arlington cannot implement such a plan. And if it did, it could basically have its cake and eat it too. It could have more economic development. Now, it would require, probably in many cases, that the developers contribute more or contribute differently. For example, right now we have our site plan development project allows developers to contribute to street art, but not to schools. And that makes no sense. Now I understand the rationale, or at least I've been told that the rationale is because you cannot link a particular development, let's say 750 Glebe Road, to students in the school a mile away. So if you can't link these two entities, you obviously cannot exact a proffer from the developer. Now, I think that analysis is incorrect. Other jurisdictions do it. So the Arlington County basically has to reevaluate its proffer system. Thank you.
Well, like, I think this touches on one of the fundamentals of my campaign and my experience in Arlington and service, that much of what we're dealing with here are basically growing pains or trying to manage the negative aspects of development or change, at the same time providing opportunities. And historically, I've said a number of times over the years, we're not Mayberry and we're not Manhattan, we're Arlington. And it's not just one Arlington. Yes, we have highly urbanized areas around the metro stations. And then we have more residential, suburban type areas. I mean, I live 2 blocks off of Lee Highway, and there's high-rise buildings 2 blocks away from me. I routinely have deer and foxes in my yard. Just look at my Facebook page. It's entertaining for my children. I'm surprised that these animals are able to live so close in an urban area. But that's an example of there's just different things about Arlington. It's not all just one or the other. Now, the General Land Use Plan has certainly guided development for probably, 5 decades now. And where it has concentrated that development along the metro corridor, and it's built up this environment and given us many wonderful things as a community. But now the pressures, because of land costs, are on these edge areas, and it's encroachment into the single-family neighborhoods or the transition zones. And that's where the neighborhoods, of course, become very anxious because they see it all coming towards them. And they worry about what the future will mean, okay? Because they, quote, didn't buy off on living that lifestyle when they purchase their homes. And so there's that change that has to be managed. Now, the county also, and I'm someone who believes you can learn from the past, has not really, in terms of comprehensive planning, accepted some of the consequences of the development, which I think is that the growing population has contributed significantly to the school population, the school capacity issue, as well as just simply competition for things such as access to playing fields, parks, and open space. We can't rely on this perception that we have all this excess capacity. We have to buy strategic sites and expand school sites and parks and recreation.
This question for me gets to the very fundamental nature in Arlington, where that's much talked about in the Planning Commission, Economic Development Commission, in the Chamber, which is what is that relationship between planning and a community's vision for what we want as a community, and economic development. And the way that I've always looked at it, they are not at all mutually exclusive. They actually go together hand in glove. Because our plans, they're just pretty pictures sitting on a shelf if we don't have the private investment to actually come in and build them out. So it has to work from an economic development. It has to work economically to attract that private investment. But it also has to work and contribute to and create a greater good for the entire community. And on the whole, I think that we've done a good job of that in Arlington. We have a very livable community. But yes, we are at a turning point. There are some things, schools certainly being one of them. I think making sure that we have access to parks and green space and open space being another. And there are pressures on neighborhoods that traditionally have not been part of our redevelopment efforts. And as a county board member, I think that it would be incumbent upon me to really listen to the neighborhoods and listen to folks and make sure that we have processes where people can have trust and faith that not only will they be heard, but that the answers are not already baked into the processes from the get-go. Because the vast majority of the time, when I hear people who are worried about a particular development project, they actually like the benefits that come from those projects. They are really just worried about the potential adverse impacts. And that's what good planning is all about, is mitigating those adverse impacts. And with solid processes, I think we will continue to move forward and thrive.
Scott, you're absolutely right. We need a vision. Although we have the general land use plan, the GLUP, we are doing much of our planning piecemeal. We have Crystal City, we have Pentagon, we have Shirlington, Westover, Clarendon, Country Club Hills. We have all of these unique, wonderful communities throughout Arlington. But clearly we still don't have a vision how we're going to connect them all together. Each one of these communities wants to keep their identity, but they also want to ensure that they can travel between the communities easily, effectively, and frankly also by not raising our taxes at the same time. I forgot what I was going to say. Give me a moment, everyone, please, for just a second. So let's talk about Crystal City for a second. Some people may call it the Manhattan on the Potomac. We have great plans for Crystal City. But what I will tell you, and the part that does keep me up at night, is we haven't thought about schools, and we haven't thought about fire stations in Crystal City. The National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, came in a few months ago to look at Crystal City and Pentagon City. And what they realized is that we actually need more ladder trucks. And with more ladder trucks, you need more firefighters. So as we plan our vision, as we look to our future, what is our capacity? What is truly our capacity to grow? Can we continue to build higher on 1031 North Vermont Street in Ballston, knowing that the schools in that area are currently overcrowded? Is that the best thing to do as we look across all of our neighborhoods here in Arlington? And frankly, as your county board member, we need to have that conversation. We have 9 master plans right now, and if you try to put them together, it's kind of an awkward puzzle that doesn't necessarily fit. When I was at Deloitte Consulting, this is what we did. This is what excites me. Looking across the board, taking a step back, and figuring out how we can be more efficient, effective, and collaborative with a vision together.
Thank you. Next question goes to Peter first. Peter, the 4 Mile Run Valley planning area, in addition to being home to my dog's favorite dog park, is also home to service industrial small businesses, many of them in the county, because this area is one of the only ones zoned for that. What are your thoughts on the 4 Mile Run Valley plan, which currently envisions an art district with parkland where current small businesses are located? And how would you support the small businesses located in the valley?
The 4 Mile Run plan and and what I would call Shirlington Crescent that goes along with it, as well as the actual 4-mile run stream. There are several comprehensive plans that deal with essentially one area. And basically 4-mile run was one that, not enough people knew they had to do the planning on it, but it kept getting pushed back because it wasn't, because in Arlington we like to keep replanning things that we've already been planning, so we kind of push back on the ones that we haven't done if there's not a lot of political calls for it and community calls. I think that from an industrial, in terms of the zone for industrial, at first one would think, well, okay, we can have a lot of things in Arlington. Do we necessarily need factories? But that particular designation of industrial, light industrial, also allows for some other things, such as there's a couple of dog obedience schools down there, and some other necessary things. And in fact, Signature Theater used to be on 4-mile run and got its start in the storefront down there. And of course, on the beloved DMV office that we almost lost. But I think that, the art district is one way in which to go with it, and I would be supportive of it. But we couldn't make Artisphere work in Roslyn, being the other side of the bridge from Georgetown and having a metro stop and having what is probably one of the most expensive zip codes within Arlington County because of all the luxury high-rise buildings there in that area. So I don't want to quash any dreams, but I think we need to be realistic about what we accomplished here. I see 4-mile run as an opportunity to have more of a mini Fairlington type of environment, similar to what is there on the other side of 4-mile run in terms of housing styles, which could include limited equity co-ops, for example, for purchase opportunities and workforce housing. But I think that ultimately a neighborhood like that is currently underserved by retail, and I'd like to see a lot of neighborhoods serving retail, and whatever the county can do to help further that, I think I would support.
My view is that 4-mile run presents tremendous opportunity, but we have to be careful and do things with some careful planning and paying attention to what are our assets there. What we have in 4-mile run is the opportunity here. There's a great small business, many of them minority-owned, thriving environment. We've got a new brewery there. And we've got established businesses that have been there a long time. We have the attendant dog services that have sprung up around that. This is a great environment that we should not lose. I am reminded of how 15 years ago, when we were, more like 13 years ago, when we were looking at revising the plan for Clarendon. And as a representative of my neighborhood in that process, being told that don't worry about the existing retailers in Clarendon, they'll be fine, or maybe they'll relocate, but they'll have places to relocate to, more to the edges. And that didn't happen. And I don't want to take for granted anymore that we can have redevelopment and just assume that these small businesses will be just fine. What I do want to use as a good example from Clarendon, though, that I think is really applicable to 4-mile run, is a lot of people don't realize that under the historic post office in Clarendon is a major postal processing facility, an industrial facility. And there are hundreds of trucks that come in and out of there every day, lots of work going on down there, and we don't even know it because it's thoughtfully put underground and it works just fine. So I think we ought to be exploring some ideas like that. But for sure, we have to have a focus at 4-mile run of how to keep that funky small business vibe going there. We want to enhance the community, but not wholesale upend it.
So there is a 4-mile Run Valley working group, and they have been meeting now for almost a year, and they truly have a vision of what they would like to see, what their identity is moving forward. They want to be semi-industrial. They want to keep their look and feel, but at the same time making it more clean, more energy efficient, and not having runoff into the stream. They also truly believe that the dog park is an economic driver. I love that dog park. I can only bring one of my dogs there. The other one gets into trouble. But 6 or 7 businesses have grown because of that dog park. One of the things I hear from this working group, and I'm not going to try to say it again because it's a tongue twister, But they have said when they see the plans that the county is presenting to them, it looks a lot like Clarendon. They see a lot of glass. They see a glass building being put on Jenny Dean Park, which we don't have enough green space as is. Why are we putting a glass building on Jenny Dean Park? Bottom line is, we need to trust these individuals who are literally spending time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears to create an identity for 4 Mile Run Valley. As a county, we need to respect the planning process, but we also need to be very truthful and honest with them. When I was working with the West Roslyn Area Planning Group, the county wasn't necessarily truthful with us and telling us what our true options were for a high school, for affordable housing, and for a fire station. If Arlingtonians are going to participate in the Arlington Way, we need to make sure they're heard, and we need to make sure that we are upfront with them with expectations and give them options for moving forward.
Well, I definitely endorse Kim's last comment about the planning process involving the RAP site, because basically citizens were informed after the fact what was going to go in there. And I think that's wrong. Furthermore, it is quite likely that the results of that planning process are going to be anything but beneficial. We know that it will bring in upwards of 1,000 new tenants on top of 775 students at the high school, not counting the fire station and a separate low-income housing project that's going to basically quadruple its size down the block. So all of this together means major congestion, and civic leaders in Roslyn indicate that it will increase basically the density of the neighborhood by 80%. So clearly something went radically wrong, and we don't need that to happen in the 4 Mile Run Valley. I just biked through there this morning. It's lovely. I think one of the things that should govern our planning process is that we should not rezone the area. We might revisit the zoning of that area only to the extent that we expand the types of businesses that might be able to go in there. But we should certainly not displace any of the existing businesses, and we should emphasize expanding the green space that's already there. That should be our primary concern. I also agree with Peter that given that we are currently subsidizing the existing Signature Theater in Shirlington, there is a very serious question whether the 4 Mile Run Valley could even support another theater, let alone displace any of the existing businesses.
Thank you. This question goes to Eric. Eric, on Saturday, the county board approved the fiscal year 2018 budget, which included a 1.5-cent increase in the property tax rate to fund rising school enrollment and rising costs from Metro. If elected, what would your guidance to the county manager be to prevent another sizable tax increase next year?
Well, first I want to just let everyone know that as a small business owner, I pay just about every kind of tax that there is in Arlington. And so I take very seriously the role that the county board serves in being a steward of taxpayer dollars. The guidance that I think that we need to give is going to have to come out of, obviously, out of a negotiation and the collaboration with the school board, because we cannot allow our schools to falter. They're growing rapidly, and so it's not only capital costs, but the operating ongoing costs of running the schools are increasing as well. However, we have a very large cost expenditure per pupil when considered looking at regionally. But we also get a lot for our schools, and it's maintaining that excellence of education is absolutely top priority. So the question is where can we find those opportunities, and how can the county board work with the school board and the school board with their superintendent to look at opportunities for cost savings. And I think that those are going to come from working together and co-locating facilities, looking at where are there, for example, should schools be in the business of maintaining their trees? That's one example that was brought up recently. And the answer might be no, that's something that the county could take on and do it more cost effectively and efficiently. So the bottom line is at this point, I can't say specifically what the guidance that I would like to see the county board to offer next year. I think there's a lot of conversations that have to happen between now and then. But what I can tell you is that I will be guided by a sense of stewardship and maintaining our excellence in public schools.
There's three things I would want to focus on as your future county board member. Number one, which we've talked about tonight, is being more business friendly. We need to ensure that 50% of our revenue comes from businesses. And in order to do that, it takes work, it takes commitment, it takes creativity. And we've seen this with Nestle, we've seen this in some other spaces, we've seen Alexandria do this. We can do this in Arlington to ensure we have 50% of revenue from our businesses and make sure that every business that comes into Arlington, their first meeting with a staff member isn't about recycling bins, but it's about, welcome to Arlington. How can I help you? How can I make your business successful? Number two is cost savings and efficiencies. We finally got our auditor on board as the county. First thing they looked at was whether or not we were collecting ambulance fees. Guess what? For the past 6 years, we haven't been collecting all of our ambulance fees. It may seem like a small thing, but I can imagine the other things we may be able to find with an independent auditor looking across all of our operating budget and how we are responsibly handling taxpayers' money. And then cost sharing and procurement and maintenance sharing. Right now in the county, most of our departments have their own vendors that they use. There is a significant opportunity here for economies of scale. Can we actually reduce our costs by consolidating our vendors and also streamlining our procurement processes? And I know that sounds dorky and kind of wonky, but we should also be doing that with our schools. Pretty much, Greenbrier Park is right next to Yorktown High School. And guess what? They are serviced by different vendors, by different maintenance companies. Let's consolidate, let's save money, let's sustain moving forward.
Well, I certainly support consolidation of public services. If elected, my primary goal will be to stretch your tax dollars. And I would definitely look to the school board operations and capital budgets first. One of the reasons why those budgets are so intractable is because current county board members claim that they have no authority over the school board because the school board is independently elected. But that's not true because by law, the county must approve both the school board's operating and capital budgets. The capital budget is revisited every 2 years, and of course the operating budget is revisited every year. Now today I just printed off some statistics that are produced by the Washington area's, it's called the WABE report, which is the Washington Area Board of Election report that is issued every year, and it indicates that Arlington, out of 10 jurisdictions, not including the District of Columbia, in the Washington, D.C. area, has the lowest average classroom size. Okay? So there is a real question as to why our class sizes, particularly at the middle and secondary level, are so low. Now, a lot of PTAs will tell you that's because we provide a better education for our children. But that's not true either, because I just looked at the same WAVE guide, and it indicates that average SAT scores as between Arlington and Fairfax County are about the same. Ours are slightly lower, and we pay $4,500 more per year to educate each one of our children. In other words, we are basically providing the same education as Fairfax County, but we're spending $4,500 per student per year more. So we need to take a look at those numbers. Also, I would also take a look at the siloing phenomenon that Kim was talking about.
Peter.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm an accountant by day, and I also happen to be a former auditor. So I think that I bring a unique perspective to looking at county finances. And I do believe that fiscal transparency and accountability are very important because, unfortunately, in the last 5 years, I think the county government, the county board in particular, lost some, respect or credibility with the voters because of the perception of mismanagement of some capital projects and spending. But I think in the end that if people feel they're getting value for their tax dollars, then again they'll feel as if the money's not being wasted. Now, I've run audit functions in my life, and while I'm fully supportive of the fact that we now have an internal audit function in the county government, it is understaffed and has very strong limits as to what it can really realistically accomplish with those resources and the way it's been set up and organized in its oversight. And that's something I would want to look to expand upon in order to basically learn more about what we can do differently. I also have a background in business process reengineering, and quality control, quality assurance. And what I would want to really challenge the manager to do is find ways on an ongoing basis, throughout the year and for years to come, to look at different programs in the county and how we deliver services, and what are the best practices other communities and places do? How do we basically deliver services more effectively, more efficiently? So at the end of the day, we're helping more people, which is what it's all about. Now, I do think that it's important that we also recognize that, when we do various subsidies or incentives to one group or another, we then have to make up that revenue somewhere else. I think that a major objective here is not, unfortunately, I think that this 1.5 cent tax increase is probably not going to be systemic because of money that wasn't spent on Metro over the years and because of the growing school system. But I do believe in which we have to, provide value for the taxpayer.
Thank you. All right, we are at our last question before closing statements, and it is at this point that I would like to acknowledge that, as some people who knew me said, you don't see me in a suit and tie very often. I would only do it for Kate and the Chamber. Another round of applause for Kate and the Chamber. All right, so we're going to start with Kim, and I will preface this by saying we would love a specific as possible answer to this question. What was the biggest mistake and the biggest success so far this year attributable to the county board?
I like to start with successes, don't you? Yes. I would have to say that our biggest success this year thus far has been bringing in Nestle. We desperately needed that anchor. We needed that anchor in Roslyn. And it really gives us an opportunity to better our processes and how we welcome and retain other businesses here in Arlington. Now, it's hard to talk about mistakes, right? Because mistakes always give you lessons learned. But one that I will say, a lesson learned. We were looking at a tax increase of 2 cents. And then one of the county board members asked the county manager to go out and bring back a 1 cent tax. And what happened in that process is 24 very valuable projects, which would actually help with planning, which would actually help with forward thinking, were put on the table. And that makes it really hard when you have 24 lightning rods put on the table, and then you're being asked to make a decision about taxes, things that actually affect people's lives. I mean, my taxes will go up $500 this year, but if I'm on a fixed income, that's a very different story. If we are truly going to look at reducing taxes and cutting budget, we need to put serious things on the table. Things that actually make sense, things that our auditor has actually found, and not things that are just going to be lightning rods and get everyone worked up.
Audrey.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say that the greatest success is in our transportation program. I know I mentioned this at last year's event, but I believe since that time we've actually approved a 10-year transit management plan that will include the expansion of bus service along the Pike and will migrate some expensive metro routes over to Arlington. I think that has become even more critical now that Metro is in crisis. We have the plan in place that will enable the county to maintain transit services that otherwise would be completely lost. And in fact, Metro, despite the recent increase in fares, as far as I know, still plans to cut 10 routes in Arlington, most of which pay for themselves in the sense that they meet all of Metro's current performance metrics. So that's on the good side. Now on the bad side, I think, is the tax rate increase. I think that that county board itself was bamboozled. It was led to believe that there was no other source of funding for Metro's shortfall and the enrollment crisis, and I believe it's flat out wrong. We currently have a general fund balance of over $550 million. Much of that cannot be spent because it will be allocated in future years' capital projects. I understand that. However, the Civic Federation Revenues and Expenditures Committee, that has bona fide accountants on it, has reported that in its conservative opinion, the county had $114 million available this year that could have been reallocated to meet these funding shortfalls. Not to mention the school board itself, which has a $77 million fund balance that can be reallocated.
I think that, and this is with all due respect to the county board, all of whom I have, strong positive working relationships with, both as they've served on the board and before, leading up to that. But I think that the board overall has gotten the last few years, because it had felt it had been burned, or members of it felt like they'd gotten burned, that they've gotten a little more risk adverse. So, on the plus side, while they're being more risk adverse, there haven't been as many big mistakes or missteps as far as I think the general public is concerned. So maybe that's the good side of it. I think the biggest mistake recently was the decision to move forward and sell off the Reevesland house. Now, on the success side, one thing, and because it speaks very closely to me as a parent and as somebody who co-chaired the school bond last year to its highest approval rating in Arlington history, is the fact that they approved new schools for the Wilson site, the Stratford Middle School, and last Saturday, a new elementary school at the Thomas Jefferson Middle School site. And I consider those to be successes because it is actually accepting responsibility and taking action to resolve the school overcrowding issues, all right? And it was done with community involvement, and obviously nothing happens quickly in Arlington, but I do think that that is sort of accepting responsibility to be part of the solution for school capacity.
Scott, I'll beg your forgiveness, and I'm going to ask to go back 1 month to December and suggest that I think it was a great, a very unfortunate, actually, I'll start with the not so great, very unfortunate, the towing ordinance that was adopted, and unfortunate in the sense that it was a breakdown in communication and a public process. I think that the chamber, and I understood that was the governor did not veto the bill that basically revoked now our authority to be able to have a second call on towing. So this all comes back to predatory towing, and in particular in the Columbia Pike area, I'm very aware of that there are small businesses that wanted more of an opportunity to help to educate their customers, because if a customer comes in to a bar or restaurant and they get towed, they're very unlikely to come back. And I don't think anyone was arguing that you should be allowed to park illegally. It really was, there should have been a better conversation about what's the right solution other than predatory towing. And the board made a mistake in that they went with sort of a draconian response that has effectively backfired, and now we have Richmond telling us what we can and cannot do. The success, on the other hand, I think was our enactment of the new regulations to allow what's called accessory homestay, Airbnb. This is, the sharing economy is the wave of the future. We sort of got out in front of that issue. We created a legal way for people to participate in that, and it also speaks to, it becomes a possible opportunity to allow to make homes more affordable for folks. So, and I think it was done on a very quick timetable and done nicely. So I think it's a success.
So unfortunately, that is all the time we have for our questions this evening. We will now hear closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes again for their remarks. Audrey, we'll start with you.
Arlington is one of the wealthiest counties in the United States, but it's paying businesses huge bonuses just to stay in the county, and longtime residents are being gentrified out of their homes. At close to 20%, Arlington's office vacancy rate is unacceptably high as federal agencies move to cheaper digs elsewhere in Northern Virginia. To its credit, the Arlington Office of Economic Development has recruited some high-profile corporate tenants. But small businesses are hurting and are likely to hurt even more when the Trump administration's anticipated budget cuts go into effect. Given the likely adverse impact of massive federal budget cuts on the local economy, I was unhappy to learn the county board has increased the property tax rate by 3.3%. Government workers receiving a pink slip surely don't need a tax rate hike now, and neither do local entrepreneurs who rely on their patronage. Residences and businesses need a fiscally conservative, environmentally conscious board member who will stretch their tax dollars while maintaining basic services. This I pledge to do if elected to county board. In addition, as an independent voice on county board, I pledge to save our parks, not pave them over, use bond money to fund schools, not Taj Mahals for some students and trailers for others. Stop recycling garden apartments into luxury townhomes and cutting down precious tree canopy for more parking. Stop the backroom deals that have replaced the Arlington Way. If elected, I pledge to require a fiscal impact analysis for every new site plan development project to assure that it actually benefits the county, end the county's pursuit of wasteful vanity projects, and redirect funds for basic needs like streets, schools, libraries, parks, and public safety, seek tax relief for both residential and commercial taxpayers.
First of all, again, I want to echo Scott's sentiments and thank Kate and the Chamber and all of you for coming out tonight and being part of this. This is democracy, and it's not always pleasant, it's not always fun, but it's essential. And I'm going to back up and go say, I find it fun. I'm just like glutton for punishment. Now, I hope that I've left the impression that I certainly don't think I'm the smartest person in the room, because I'm not, all right? But that I have done a lot of the work over the years and have the deep community roots and the experience to hit the ground running on day one and be a full member of the county board and to represent Arlington on regional bodies as well. Not to be a pushover, but to advocate for people of different opinions, as I have long had a reputation for doing so. Now, I have a reputation for being collaborative, for listening to people, for asking probing questions, because I want to understand your issue and how we can do better and to hear your ideas so I can advocate for them, okay? And I don't give up easily on these things. But then a reputation for then sticking it out and getting things done. Because at the end of the day, what we're lacking in this community at times is a sense of urgency. We never lack for one more meeting, okay? We really don't. And I've, like most of you and people up here, have been to a lot of meetings over the years. But what we need to do is find a way not to just feedback from people, but to incorporate these different opinions into the final outcome. Otherwise, you're just insulting people and wasting their time, all right? Now, again, I'm here to get things done, and that's what I'm running for the county board for, to have that sense of urgency and to take action, because we're limited today by what we didn't do 5 years and 10 years ago, okay? And I don't want to be in that position as a community, regardless of what my role is, in another 5, 10, or 20 years, all right? Because we didn't take steps now. Now, I ask for you to be your first choice vote, because you get to rank us, at the caucus in May. And please visit my website, Fallon for County Board, FOR, County Board, and I'm happy to reach out and tell me more about what's important to you. Thank you.
Well, I'd also like to thank Kate and the Chamber. This is a great opportunity. I think we've had actually a nice, a very informative conversation here tonight about getting at the heart of what does it mean to be an Arlingtonian. What kind of community do we want to be, and what do we have, most importantly, what are the assets that we already have that we have to build on? And we have a lot of great opportunities here in Arlington. And first and foremost of those is that we are very prosperous because we have a great business plan, if you will, here in Arlington, where we invest in ourselves, we invest in our infrastructure, we invest in great schools, we invest in a social safety net, and that pays dividends for us. And it makes this great progressive success story that I love about Arlington, that I love being a part of, and that I'm looking to further serve on the county board with your support. And so what does that mean? And why should you support me? Why should I be your number one choice? I hope that you will see that I am uniquely qualified with not only my experience from the civic side, as a small business owner, somebody who's been a member of the chamber for almost 10 years, I think, but somebody who can connect the dots in the way that we need to meet the challenges that we have going forward. I believe there's no such thing as the status quo. We are either going to innovate or we're going to stagnate. I want to see us innovate. I propose that we have innovative solutions for our school capacity crisis, for keeping Arlington affordable, and for continuing to invest in that shared prosperity for all that our great business community is such an important part of. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Our public, our private, and our nonprofit partnerships really make us strong. It makes us what we are. It makes us Arlington. And we are at a tipping point where we are not going to be able to sustain all of our spending that we've done in the past. And that means we really need to look to our business community to partner with us further. I think Kate and the Chamber and Victor have done a great job of really building our businesses and the relationships that we have. And we can do more. My background, which is unique, which I think will bring something spectacular to the county board, is that I have business and management consulting background. But I also have boots literally on the ground as a volunteer firefighter EMT with my community and my civic engagement experience. All of these experiences allow me to see Arlington from a different perspective and truly be able to understand the needs of our community members as well as the needs of our businesses. I hope that on May 9th, 11th, or 13th, you will vote for me. Please check out my website. It's kim4arlington.com. I would love to hear any other thoughts you have, any other suggestions, and thanks again for being here tonight.
Nathan, would you like to make a closing statement on behalf of...
First, I'll just echo all the candidates' thanks to the Chamber for giving me the opportunity to speak on Vivek's behalf. I know for a fact that he really wishes he could be here, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak on his behalf. As an entrepreneur and a chemical engineer, I bring something unique to the table. And I am uniquely qualified to execute a vision of clean and green tech economy in Arlington. If elected to the county board, I will formalize a network of key green tech anchor companies already based in Arlington and Northern Virginia to serve as an industry foundation guiding and mentoring new entrepreneurs. I will convene a university cluster comprised of Virginia's universities in the Boston corridor and schools in DC and Maryland to create a green tech university consortium based on partnered innovation. I will work with regional partners and the Commonwealth to create performance-based incentives that offer tax rebates, workspace, and innovation prizes that attract green tech companies to Arlington. I will actively engage in outreach with angel investors and venture capitalists nationwide to invest in and fund a green and clean tech economy. I will leverage the expertise of 1776 and other incubator models like Startup Studio to create additional incubator spaces and house new companies. And finally, I will invest in our schools and next generation workforce training programs that emphasize a green tech curriculum, creating an opportunity pipeline from education to employment. To be a global leader in the green tech space means our students need to be globally competitive. This week, I sat down with Arlington small business owners to discuss the challenges that they face, and one thing was made crystal clear. If we are forcing prospective small business owners in Arlington to wait, refile, reorganize, and make their best guesses at every step of the way towards opening their doors, we need to question how committed we are to business in Arlington. I can guarantee that I am committed, and my candidacy represents an opportunity to refocus our business priorities in Arlington. I hope that you are ready to join me, and I ask for your support at the Democratic Caucus on May 9th, 11th, and 13th.
All right, thank you. And thank you all. As Peter said, this is democracy in action, local democracy in action, so we appreciate you all coming out and participating in that. And also a thank you to Cinetic Theater for hosting us and for this very artistic background. Appreciate it. All right, now let's have another round of applause for the candidates. This is a pretty hip crowd, so you probably don't need the reminder, but the Democratic Caucus will take place on May 9th, 11th, and 13th, and the general election this year will be Tuesday, November 7th. All right, with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kate.
Wonderful. Again, a big thank you to the candidates. I'm only closing things out so I can thank Scott as well. Let's have a big round of applause for Scott Broadbent. Really appreciate you all being here tonight. Local elections are important. Local elections matter. They matter to us as residents. They also really matter to us as members of the business community. Please go out there and vote. Please share what you heard tonight with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues as well. We have some great chamber events coming up where you can do just that. Tomorrow night we have what's usually our biggest business after business of the year at Bean, Kinney & Corman, Wrighton Courthouse from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We actually have current County Board Chair Jay Fazette, whose seat we are discussing tonight, who will be in attendance as well. We welcome you all to join. We welcome the candidates to join as well. You can register online or calling the Chamber office. Last but not least, we also have the Best Business Awards next Tuesday, May 2nd in the evening at the Keybridge Marriott, where we will be honoring a variety of Arlington businesses of all sizes. We'll be also inducting 2 people into the Arlington Business Hall of Fame. John Milliken, who's actually a former county board member, longtime civic activist, chaired the community facility study, which I had the pleasure of serving on, as well as Rich Dowd, my predecessor, who served as the Chamber of Commerce president for 23 years. So we look forward to seeing you all, hopefully at one of those 2 events. Thank you for being here, and thank you again to our candidates, Crystal City Bid for being our sponsor, Cinetic is our host, and last but not least, our moderator extraordinaire, Scott.